From the Clark Ford Studio in Oxford, Mississippi, MBW Digital proudly presents the Oxford Exxon Podcast.
I'd say thanks for tuning in, but why am I going to give you a round of applause for something you're supposed to do, to be frank?
And now, here are your hosts, Chase Parham.
And broadcast school has really paid off.
And Neil McCready.
I deserve to be on TV.
Thursday edition of the Oxford Exxon Podcast. Chase Parham, Neil McCready, Clark Ford Studio. Today we are going to talk obviously a little more about Rich Rodriguez. Looks like he is closing in on a hire. I guess Matt Luke appears to be closing in on a hire that is widely connected to Rich Rodriguez. So that, and we're going to talk with Jeffrey as we do every Thursday, except for last Thursday because that was kind of a one-off show in the middle of the holiday. But today we are going to discuss some college football, the playoff games, and then a lot of NFL as we have wild card weekend upon us Saturday and Sunday prior to the divisional round next weekend, which has quickly become maybe the best weekend in football throughout the year. So we'll keep hitting on that a little bit. A couple things from the site people want us to mention as well. But as we jump in today, Neil, Calvin McGee, his name has become widely linked to widely linked to the open assistant coach position at Ole Miss, replacing Maurice Harris as tight ends coach is the way it looks right now. If this deal gets done, if it's not done yet as of 8:45 this morning, but should this get done, a guy that is currently the offensive coordinator at New Mexico and has been with Rich Rod in a lot of places. He was at West Virginia from 2001 to 2007. Went to Michigan with him from 8 to 10, and then was also at Arizona with him. So basically he's been with Rodriguez through every stop, either as offensive coordinator, running backs coach, and then from a tight end standpoint. He hasn't coached tight end since 1996. I don't think that's a big deal. And then he was a tight end. He played for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers for 4 seasons in the mid to late 80s. So that's sort of a quick rundown of McGee. But when we're looking at Rodriguez, once he got on the staff, not a shock at all that McGee would be a name that would surface and probably ultimately get on the staff at Ole Miss.
Yeah, it's almost a given, really, because he's been with them for
everywhere since West Virginia.
Yeah, so makes sense. You have to do installation, and it helps to have somebody else to help you with the installation, not only with installing it to players, but installing it to the other coaches. I don't know a whole lot about him. I think he has a pretty good reputation as a recruiter. I don't know that. I can't vouch for it.
It's just, other than Michigan from 8 to 10, never been anywhere that is a recruiting power that's ever going to be that top 5 elite program by any means from a recruiting standpoint. And then also, when he was at Michigan, he was the offensive coordinator, and we know that's about closing more than foot soldier and mercenary and stuff like that. So he really hasn't been in this position in a little while because he's been a coordinator for most of the last decade or so from a coaching standpoint.
I'll be honest, I'm surprised that there haven't been more changes. I assumed there would be, and maybe there still will be. I know Derek Nix interviewed for a job at Louisville. I don't guess he either decided that he didn't want it or he didn't get it. I have no idea which. It appears that he's going to stay on the staff. This next recruiting, I feel like I'm a broken record. It points more and more and more towards this next season's going to be a transition season. A build season, which is frankly what it needs to be. Fans and administrators and all of that stuff can change that, but any degree of common sense says that 2019 shapes up as a build/transition year where the coaching staff is going to get an opportunity to do it the right way, if you will, and build it over time. And hiring McGee points to that, because I don't think Calvin McGee leaves a job as offensive coordinator to come someplace as tight ends coach if he is going to have to move again. It's January, so move again in 10 to 11 months.
Although, assuming he's probably getting a 2-year deal, he's probably making more money as an assistant at Ole Miss than he would be as a coordinator in New Mexico, I would think.
I just talking about from a stability standpoint. Maybe that's not a factor. I think it's becoming very clear that at least the decision makers of today are making it well known that this is not going to be a win or else deal, which I think is smart, because I think once you get to that place where you get that question a lot, you're going to get it 1,000 times between now and June. Is it Omaha or bust for Bianco? Last year when it was NCAA tournament or bust for Kennedy, when you get to that place, like in Chicago, they're already doing this thing about it's World Series or bust for Joe Madden. Well, holy hell, if that's the case, go ahead and fire the guy. That's ridiculous. You're creating your own adversity when you do that. So I think Matt Luke's going to get an opportunity to he talked about putting a stamp on his stamp on the program. He's doing that, and I think he's going to get an opportunity to build it over time. This next recruiting class becomes awfully critical, not only from a perception standpoint, but from a reality standpoint. They got to put players in spots. This is as you've chronicled with your pieces, this is a really thin, really young team. This next season, frankly, is the first year that the NCAA sanctions truly kick in.
Yeah, the credit card bill is the 19 season from a roster standpoint.
Yeah, and if you don't make a significant payment, the interest makes the 2020 bill every bit as big. So this is the year that you have to put a big payment down in the form of recruiting. You've got to go out and recruit players who can fit into your system and provide depth. Everyone talks about, we do a lot because of what we do, about getting the 5 stars and the high 4 stars and stuff, and you definitely want those kids to win big. You can't win big in the SEC without impact players. But what you really can't afford is bust. You can't have a ton of waste. You've got to be lean. So that's what's going to be interesting. I thought the other thing that was kind of funny and interesting is because a lot of people were talking about today being the 12-year anniversary of Nick Saban's hire at Alabama and all that stuff. I thought the other thing that was funny is Russell, this isn't a slap at Rich Rodriguez at all. It just shows you kids are so different now. Russell reached out to all these commitments and stuff. Hey, what are your thoughts on Rich Rodriguez? And most of them just didn't know who he was. They live in such a different news cycle, and I'm not picking on kids either.
Honestly, I don't know that they could name more than 5 or 10 coaches currently, because there was a member of our board who I know who he is, but I'm not going to give it away. He made a mention that a kid that he coaches, high school kid, got a text from Scott Frost last year in the middle of the UCF season and had no idea who Scott Frost was.
Yeah, I can see that.
They don't know. They are so disconnected versus even the average fan from what's going on in the college football world.
They don't watch college football. That's not what they do all day Saturday. They have a totally different – they don't watch television. I've got 2 high school kids. They don't watch TV. They watch stuff on their devices. They watch on demand. They have a completely different cycle of digesting information and news than what we did. They don't sit and watch a game. Just don't do it. They watch highlights.
One little quick thought on what you're talking about a second ago with contracts and who they're hiring. I mean, the one thing I give them credit for here is that you can't hire a staff with fatalism. You know what I mean? You can't intentionally not hire the best candidates simply because you might be doing something later. I mean, if you have openings, well, you got to fill them. You got to figure out a way to fill them in the correct way. You got to fill them with guys who you believe can be successful and try to turn the thing around. So that's one thing, Terry. I think when we always talk about, hey, you know, it's this and it's that, well, the other way makes even far less sense if you go, hey, I'm intentionally going to sabotage my own search. No, I'm going to go hire who I think is going to win, and we're going to go from there and do this thing.
Yeah, I guess my point is if you as an administration believe that, hey, if we don't win enough games, if we don't sell enough tickets, that we've got to make a change. I don't know how much you hamstring yourself down the road with long-term contracts. They clearly believe that they've got the right guy, and that even if there are some growing pains next season, and there almost certainly will be, that he's made the type of staff hires and stuff that are going to build some faith with the fan base.
There's some ways that these contracts make no sense. I will give them credit for it. There's no sudden buyouts in them, and it's far more digestible over periods of time from payment plans and just paying out the contracts versus these, hey, you're fired, like Gus Malzahn, you're fired, and in 30 days you're owed $15 million. I mean, there's positives and negatives to each kind of contract structure, and it would be, if these contracts are not played out all the way with these guys being on-field coaches at Ole Miss for 3 seasons or whatever, this is at least far more digestible than the other route as they tried to figure this thing out.
Oh, sure. It's that whole deal of if you don't have the guy, that you should have made the change in November.
Mm-hmm.
It's very different.
People paid a lot of money to make decisions. And
when you make the decisions, and if they turn out to be wrong, we've said this for a while. I'll say it again. It's probably not a popular thing to say in that athletics building, but Ross Bjork's tied to Matt Luke. I don't think Ross Bjork gets to hire the next head coach at Ole Miss unless Matt Luke leaves for greener pastures 5-6 years down the road after a bunch of winning. I don't foresee that. I mean, if Matt Luke makes all these hires and 2-3 years from now it's still a cellar-dweller program, and a decision is made by the new chancellor to or whoever that, hey, it's time to move on, I don't think Ross Bjork survives that.
I agree with that. And you mentioned Saban's anniversary. You were obviously covering things in Alabama at the time. Kind of give me a little background. I mean, I know the gist of it. What do you kind of remember from the whole Rodriguez to Saban and how that all played out?
Jimmy Sexton was telling Alabama for months, be patient. Saban wants the job. And the NFL season is a long season. I don't think it ended that year until January 1st or 2nd, somewhere in there. I don't remember the exact date. The Dolphins had a game, if I remember right, against the Colts to finish the season. Peyton Manning's Colts, and the game was in, hell, I don't remember where the game was. Alabama panicked. Mal Moore panicked. He couldn't get Nick Saban to give him a private answer. Couldn't get Nick Saban on the phone. And they offered the job to Rich Rodriguez.
December 31st at Indianapolis.
They offered the job to Rich Rodriguez, and he took it. Now, I have a feeling that when we do press conferences and stuff, and he's asked about it, he's going to downplay that. I could be wrong. I don't know. I haven't talked to Rich Rodriguez in 12 years. But I remember Rodriguez, they were at the Gator Bowl, I think, and he had that year, but they had gotten a Gator Bowl bid, and he had flown to Jacksonville, as you know, the coaches will go 3-4 weeks early and do like a little press conference-y thing with the local media, and hey, we can't wait to get down here, and you're going to love our kids, and our kids are going to love you, and we can't wait to go to the hospital and see the kids and do all the stuff, and we can't wait for our week and fill in the blank. He had done that as the West Virginia coach. He had flown to Jacksonville to do Gator Bowl stuff. And that day, we reported that he'd taken the job. He took the job. And he took the plane from Jacksonville back to Morgantown after the media thing, presumably to, collect his family, and he was going to fly to Alabama the next morning. And then the rest is, we've talked about it so many times that I don't think anybody wants to hear it. Whether he changed his mind, whether the story is, I don't know whether it's true or not. I have no idea. So it's become legend. The story is that day on the Feinbaum show, which at that time was an Alabama show, state of Alabama show. I didn't hear it because I was on the air in Mobile that night. We did 2 extra hours, if I remember. Or 1 extra hour, I don't know. Anyway, the story goes that Feinbaum ripped the hire, and that a lot of his callers called in and really ripped the hire. Why are we hiring this hick from West Virginia when we could get Saban or we could get whoever?
Who'd the fans want?
Oh, they wanted Saban, but they didn't think they could get him. It's the funny part about the revisionist history, the people that throw stuff in my face about the Saban thing is I always laugh at that. We knew all along we were getting Saban. So you knew all along you were getting Saban, so Mal Moore offered the job to Rich Rodriguez? It makes no sense. So it wasn't a super popular move at Alabama, but sometime in the overnight or that early that next morning when it was time to get on a plane, they didn't get on it. And at that point, Alabama turned its attention to Saban and said, we'll wait. We'll wait. And they did. They waited until the season ended. And when the Dolphins lost the finale to end their season, Saban had done that press conference where he said, okay, I'll say it. I won't be the coach at Alabama.
When was this in this timeline?
It was between Rodriguez turning it down.
Okay.
It was 3 freaking long weeks, man. I mean, I remember I was on the phone on Christmas Eve. I was on the phone on Christmas Day. It was just obnoxious. And he, that week, said, I don't remember when exactly it was, I won't be the coach at Alabama. So we're chasing all these other people. But it always came back to Saban. You knew that Mal Moore was going to go down to Miami and he was going to offer the job to Nick Saban, and nobody knew whether he'd take it or not. I had a feeling he would take it based on conversations I had had with people who were close to him. Once it became obvious that Alabama was going to wait on him. And had he said no, I don't know what they would have done. I don't know where they would have turned.
Rodriguez said no on December the 8th, 2006.
Yeah.
Pulling up a story from AL.com a few years ago where they kind of detail that day in detail.
So it's 23, 24 days. It was a long month. Because people kept wanting stories, and my bosses were like, we need an update on the Alabama search, and it was, there's no update. Basically, we'll make something up. There was just nothing to write. So you did all these stories where you talked to people who were close to Saban about would he take it, would he not take it, and there were people who knew Saban well. Chris Landry, for example, knew Saban well, and Chris Landry told me he's not going to take it. It's not a slam dunk. But as that season unfolded in Miami, and a lot of the stuff that he does at Alabama didn't work in an NFL setting. You can't treat NFL players the way that you treat college players. They have representation. They're making money. They're not going to, and the league doesn't allow you to silence players in the NFL. There's an agreement between the Players Union and the NFL Football Writers Association. The locker rooms are open a certain period of time. Players talk. You can, at Alabama, tell Tua Tagovailoa, hey, you're only talking twice this season. Good luck with Dante Culpepper. The media is going to go talk to him, and he's going to talk. I mean, Sean Payton, can you imagine if Sean Payton told Drew Brees, hey, you're not doing media this week? The backlash would be
everything's just business.
Just wouldn't happen. Yeah, and you can't control stuff the way that he likes to control stuff.
Yeah.
NFL is much more of a democracy than the college game, which is an anarchy.
Let's go talk to Jeffrey in a second. For that, I'll tell you that it's time to switch over to G&M Pharmacy. Don't waste your time at the big chains. Go somewhere where you're appreciated. They're locally owned and operated, and they care about their customers. They've been Oxford's trusted hometown pharmacy for 40 years and offer many great services such as MedSync, immunizations, free delivery to your home or workplace, and they're conveniently located right off South Lamar Boulevard there in Oxford. Transferring your medications is simple. You give them a call at 662-236-2222, and they'll take care of the rest.
The podcast also brought to you by Oxford University Bank. OUB is locally owned and operated right here in Oxford. When you deposit money at OUB, that money and the vast majority of the bank's profits go right back into the Oxford community. OUB gives you the comfort of home and all the benefits the big mega banks provide. OUB also has a commercial checking account now paying 1% interest as long as you keep $10,000 in the account. It comes with fully interactive online banking. They also can set up any local business to deposit checks from their office and not have to worry with coming to the bank daily to deposit those checks. More than likely, any business owner at another bank is now paying a monthly fee for their account, and they are most assuredly not making 1% on their money. To learn more about OUB, check out liveoxfordbankoxford.com or call 662-234-6668. OUB is FDIC insured. Are also brought to you by Harry Alexander. Harry is an Oxford-based RE/MAX Legacy Realty agent. He's been in Oxford more than 4 decades. No one knows the residential and condo market in Oxford better than Harry. Go to his site. He'll prove it to you. HarryAlexander.com. Click on the Properties and Neighborhoods tab. Filter through by what you're looking for. And then send him an email. It's ha@harryalexander.com. Also brought to you by Grenada Nissan. If you're in the market for a Nissan vehicle, look no further than Grenada Nissan. They have a complete selection of new and previously owned Nissan vehicles. If they don't have what you're looking for, they'll get it. Great service after the sale. Phenomenal people there at Grenada Nissan. You'll have a great car buying experience. It's GrenadaNissanUSA.com. And we're brought to you by John Edwards of Regency Travel Incorporated in Memphis. Told you about John for a while, so whether you're looking to go to the Caribbean, whether you're looking to go to Florida, starting to think about your summer vacation, spring break, Pebble Beach, Scotland, Ireland, whatever it may be, get in touch with John. He's part of Virtuoso. It's a worldwide network of travel partners that allows John to supply his clients with added values and unique benefits that are simply not available to other travelers. You call John, you tell him what you're looking to do, give him some parameters, a budget, time frame, that kind of thing. He'll take care of the rest, and he'll come up with things that you would never find on your own. That's his job. He does it really well. 901-494-3387, or send him an email, jedwards@regencytravel.net. First-time clients can save $50 off their first booked trip just by telling John you heard about Regency Travel on the podcast.
Started telling you yesterday about scripted jewelry. That's scriptedjewelry.com. Go to the website. Check it out for yourself. You can shop. You can see a sizing guide, the lookbook, the frequently asked questions, and much more, whether it's a pendant or a ring. All different kinds of options here with Scripted Jewelry, including fingerprints. You can write out what you'd like. You can make a great keepsake, a great gift for any occasion, a lot of occasions coming up, or just a thank you to that special person in your life. So, again, necklaces, so many things to do with Scripted Jewelry. And, again, that is scriptedjewelry.com. They turn it around. They work with you. They tell you through every step of the process to make sure you get exactly what you're looking for. That's going to be, again, a great gift and a great keepsake. That's scriptedjewelry.com. Now we'll go to Jeffrey Wright on the Patterson and Earhart hotline. Jeffrey, good morning. I know you got a busy day. We'll jump right into it. But first, I know you had a busy weekend in Oxford. How was your New Year's Eve and your wedding weekend?
It was a lovely weekend. One of my best friends from growing up, Colin, together from 4th grade on. He married an Ole Miss girl. So that should fire up the podcast. So it was a great weekend. But it was also one of those weird weekends where, because I was involved, like, I didn't have my phone on me a lot. I wasn't plugged in. And then, like, it was a longer wedding. There were several other events because of the holiday weekend going on kind of around it. Like, when I got back on New Year's Day to Memphis, like, I didn't realize that Chandler Parsons had blasted the Grizzlies for not playing him. It's amazing how when you don't feel plugged in our business, how much like that, how disconcerting that is.
Well, and for someone who is extremely plugged in constantly, I mean, you're focused on 15 different things at one time, so that is even more disorienting than usual. I know you had an event on the night of the playoff games. How did you manage that? How much did you see of those two games?
So, the good news is you basically only watched the first half in either game. So the Notre Dame game I watched with your brother at my parents have a place down there, so watch that game with your brother. Then there was that little hour in between them, and the event was very accommodating to the possible sports fan. There were lots of TVs everywhere. So I got to socialize for about the 30, 45 minutes before it. And then once game started, Daddy had bets to win. So I ended up watching. All you need to do in the Alabama game was 28-0. I mean, people can act like Oklahoma was, made a furious comeback, but the reality is Alabama was just trying to get out of there. Like, did you ever feel like Alabama wasn't going to win the game?
Well, no, not at all. Not at any moment.
So
it was all about whether or not they were going to cover the entire game. That was it, the 14.
Yeah. So congratulations. You got a backdoor cover. That's why you only bet the first half of Alabama. It's a veteran play. But I don't know, man. To me, like, January 1 was so anticlimactic. Like, it's not breaking news on this show. We've been discussing it for 4 years. This idea of not playing the playoff games on January 1 is so dumb. It's so stupid, and they get what they deserve. Because, yet again, the ratings were awesome last year for the playoff, and yet again, they stink this year, relatively, like, comparatively.
Yeah, no, I understand.
So you tell me what the difference is.
It's the date. That's it. It's bad when it's on New Year's Eve. It's easy.
Yeah.
For lots of different reasons. But what's your early gut? What are you betting for Clemson and Alabama?
Do I think Trevor Lawrence can beat? That's what it comes down to. Do I think Trevor Lawrence can beat Tagovailoa? And my answer is no, but I can't tell if it's just because I think, like, Trevor Lawrence has a dumb haircut and a 5-head. Like, by that logic, Peyton Manning would have never won anything. Like,
I mean, dude's a freshman, but he can make the throws.
He can make the throws, but have you been impressed with ball placement or accuracy?
Well, look, he's going to make some bad throws, too. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying he can. If you told me he got hot for a half and really made this thing kind of fun, I wouldn't be shocked. He's going to make a critical error at some point. There's no doubt about that.
Because it's weird to me. Like, I felt watching both games play, I felt Notre Dame was much closer to Clemson than Oklahoma was to Alabama, and the scores and obviously Clemson railroads Notre Dame, and Oklahoma stays inside the number against Alabama. But, like, if you watched the games, that game got out of hand from Notre Dame really on about 5 plays, and really that last touchdown with the when Kelly mismanaged the clock was the last 55 seconds. That was all she wrote. But, like, when you were watching the actual, like, lines of scrimmage, when you were watching, Notre Dame was able to run the ball a little bit. Like, in terms of, like, who I thought was more effective at making the other team uncomfortable, I thought Notre Dame did a better job in that for a longer period than Oklahoma did. And I felt like Oklahoma kind of had the advantage of what we've seen Alabama have a tendency to do this year. They get up so big and they just don't care. Like, they're just trying to get out of there. And so I felt like then they reached a point where Alabama was like, oh crap, we got to go score. And then they scored immediately. But, like, in terms of who I thought, like, was actually more competitive, like, in terms of line of scrimmage, in terms of, like, the effectiveness, I actually thought Notre Dame did a better job than Clemson.
Next week for the divisional round is
Notre Dame did a better job than Oklahoma.
Yeah, right. Next week for the divisional round is one of the best weekends of the year from a football standpoint. You get 4 really good games with 8 really good teams. What's kind of your opinion of Wild Card Weekend this week? What are the ones you're interested in? Kind of give me a little ranking just from a TV standpoint for this weekend.
Yeah, I do kind of agree with you. It's now quickly becoming the best weekend of football.
Yeah, no doubt.
Although the problem is, like, this year especially, it'll be. But we've had some years past where, like, you had the Connor Cook versus the Yates of Hell showdown. That was not exactly electric television. I wouldn't try to defend that to anyone. But if I'm San Diego, who I actually think is a pretty good team, this is like the last matchup that I want for them with Baltimore. It's funny how, in this era of quarterback, the most effective guy for his team, I mean, honestly, right now, it's been the way that Lamar Jackson plays of the wild card teams. I mean, obviously, Breeze and Manning and Brady are different animals. But, if you look at, he doesn't scare you as a quarterback in the sense that, oh, my God, he can make this throw. He can, he terrifies you in that perspective. What he terrifies you is you don't ever get the ball. I mean, if you look at the last Chargers game, I think they had something like 9 plays in the first half because they just hold the ball forever. They're running the play clock down. They're an extremely efficient running offense right now. And then obviously when he takes off and runs, it is something to behold. But that's the other thing about it. It's like, okay, well, is that sustainable long term? So, that's a fascinating game to me because on top of that, Baltimore's defense, they've now because their offense has been so effective at holding the ball, their defense just kind of blitzes basically every other play. They get after you, and they are terrifying. If I'm a San Diego or whatever, an LA fan now. So I think that's a great one. Is Philly in Chicago? Is it interesting? Because I was trying to think about it. Have we talked ourselves into Philly for non-football reasons?
They for whatever reason, they're good with Foles. They play differently with Foles. He's not as good of a quarterback as Wentz, but they play differently for him.
See, I'm not even sure that I'm not even sure that he's not as good as Wentz. I'm not on the Wentz train. I think Wentz is a highlight reel because he's this big, strong kid that makes plays outside the pocket. So in the day and age in which you watch football on Red Zone, it felt like last year, every time you were breaking in to watch an Eagles game, that you would see the 60-yard bomb because Foles broke 4 tackles that were trying to sack him, and then he gets outside the pocket and throws a deep ball to an open guy. But in terms of pure quarterback play, I'm not really sure that's what it is. But you look at him, it's okay, well, the Cowboys beat him in Week 14. They beat the ghost of the Rams in Week 15. The Texans wins a pretty good win, and then last week against the Redskins, it wasn't all that impressive. But I don't know. I just feel like I've watched Philly play so much this year that I don't know if they're broken or what, but they're just, I don't know, they're not the same team as last year. So I don't find them all that threatening. But then at the same time, it's okay, well, the Bears, Nick Foles, say what you, as Neil said, Nick Foles has done it before. Mitch Trubisky hasn't. And that is I definitely think that was a big factor last year for Goff. I think Goff looked, the moment, I think, surprised Goff more than he was expecting it to. And then I think the Falcons' defense obviously had something to say about that too. So I'm not quite as interested in that one. I think Seattle-Dallas is fascinating because I think Dallas drew probably their worst matchup that they could have of the teams that really could have made the wild card. I think Seattle was clearly the worst matchup. And then Indy and Houston's somewhat interesting to me in the fact that I think Indy's better, but Indy has to go on the road. If you look at how Andrew Luck's played the second half of the season, he's been awesome. So
yeah, he's really been
fascinating to me.
He's been elite since about
no
week 8 or 9 when he got kind of. It's almost like he kind of mean, I know this is that cliche and it's so stupid because you don't actually have rust as a human being, but it's almost like he sort of shook the cobwebs off a little bit and got kind of remembered how to be a quarterback. And I know this is really a stupid analogy. But he's looked a lot more fluid.
No, I actually don't think it's like when people act like that's a dumb cliche. It's like, well, for him, it is a repetition sport, and everyone knows that there is it's the same. I don't care if you're playing tournament golf. I don't care if you're playing football. I don't care if you're playing, the difference between batting practice and baseball. It's like a game rep, a live rep, is a completely different thing. And if you haven't done that in 2 years in the NFL, where the speed of the game is like unfathomable, I can understand why it took you a little bit to kind of remember how you used to do it. And then I think the other flip side of it is I don't think early in the year, if you watched him, I thought he was kind of guiding some footballs. I don't think he trusted the shoulder yet. And then I don't know if there was a moment maybe where he got hit, maybe where something clicked with him and he said, you know what, I'm going to be okay. But I thought there was clearly the second half of the season, I felt like maybe his arm had more zip. And honestly, it might have been something just as simple as, hey, his arm started to get stronger as the year was going on because, when he came back, it maybe wasn't all the way there. But, I think that's the most interesting aspect of the AFC. 1 through 6, I can make a case that I think all 6 can get to the Super Bowl. And I guess now with Philly, because Philly is an interesting matchup in that I do think Philly's probably one of those teams. I think Philly can beat New Orleans, and I think Philly can beat the Rams. So now do you have to consider 1 through 6 in the NFC that you can close your eyes and foresee a scenario in which they make the Super Bowl? I think it's weird in this sense in that I kind of like the wild card teams to act like if I had to, for instance, if I have to bet on the AFC teams that I think can make the Super Bowl from this weekend, I'm taking Indy in game 1 because of luck, but that's just like wildly insulting. Like, what if DeAndre Hopkins against the Pats, has a great performance, and then that defensive line gets after Brady? Like, that's a pretty good formula to beat the Patriots. So to dismiss Houston is naive and dumb in my opinion. But if you're actually looking at like the teams that I like more, like I like Indy, a road team. I like the 6th seed. I like the 6th seed in the AFC. And then I guess long term, do you have to say if for betting purposes, do you like Philly's chances this year to do it better than Chicago's? And I think it's fascinating because I think now we've come up with there's 12 teams that I think you can make a reasonable case for, all of them making the Super Bowl because, I understand Dallas gets the headlines for, Cooper and whatnot, but man, that defense is no joke either. And I feel like that's the most overlooked defense right now in football.
It's kind of leading me into my next question. As a Saints fan, who do I want to play? I can get anybody but the Bears in the next round. You either get the Eagles if they beat the Bears, or you get the winner of the Seahawks and the Cowboys. What am I hoping for?
You're hoping for Seattle.
I agree. I think if you get Seattle in the Dome, and I think Pete Carroll deserves a ton of credit for what he's done this year because he basically reinvented this team in week 6, and he's made some pretty darn good personnel moves. He's kind of changed their philosophy. But at the same time, I don't think this defense is one of his best defenses. And then on top of that, I just don't think if you get if you can get anything that resembles a track meet, there's no chance Seattle can keep up.
Let's take a break in our talk with Jeffrey to tell you about Blow Dry Bar Oxford. That's there on Jackson Avenue, 10 to 6, Tuesday to Friday, 10 to 3 on Saturdays. And when you buy a gift card for that special lady in your life, or if you're one of our 4% listening, like to take care of yourself, tell them about rubbergrove.com, tell them about the podcast. They'll give you a discount on your blowout, other services there at Blow Dry Bar for everything from keratin to spray tans and much more. So if you're coming into Oxford, take care of the female in your life with a gift card. You might be doing some other things. You got basketball games coming up on Saturdays. Make sure you have the weekend that both of you want there with Blow Dry Bar Oxford. Again, that is on Jackson Avenue, and you can give them a call at 662-638-3310.
You saying women don't like basketball?
I'm just giving a lot of options, a lot of alternatives. I'm just mapping it out. That's what I'm doing.
Okay. All right, fair enough.
Are you finding offense?
No, I'm not offended at all. I do know some women who like basketball.
Do you think I'm being sexist with this?
No,
this?
I think you're being basketballist.
Okay.
I'm kidding. I'm totally joking.
Yeah.
Guests join us, as Chase mentioned, on the Patterson and Earhart hotline. Patterson and Earhart, attorneys at law. They specialize in personal injury law and real estate law, but what they have is a general practice that can handle any of your legal needs. When you contact them, you speak to one of the partners in the firm, and that's who's going to handle your case, not some paralegal at a faceless corporate firm. If Patterson and Earhart can't help you, they'll refer you to someone who can. John Calvin Patterson and Wes Earhart are Ole Miss guys. They're local guys, and when you call them, you're going to get one of them on the phone within the same day, guaranteed. Good luck with that at the cookie cutter law firms, the big law firms out there. It's not going to happen. It will with Patterson and Earhart. So whether you've been injured in a car wreck or have other legal issues, give them a call, 662-526-1992, or check out their website, pelaws.com. Your initial consultation is free. We're also brought to you by Home to Suites Oxford. It's now open. They would like to wish everyone a happy new year and invite you to stay with them in 2019. Coming to Oxford to watch Rebel Hoops at the Pavilion, Home to Suites is conveniently located 1 mile just off the old Taylor Road exit. They're offering a 20% discounted rate the entire week of Pop-Up Oxford. You have to call the front desk to receive the discount when booking. That's January 19th through the 26th. You've heard Chase talk about that. Pop-Up Oxford Week. If you want to get the 20% discount, you need to call the desk at Home 2 Suites in Oxford. It is a pet-friendly hotel. You don't have to leave your four-legged friends behind. They have a designated area for walks, complete with the pet station for your convenience. And be sure to follow them on social media, Home 2 Suites Oxford, so that you do not miss their announcement of when football weekend reservations are going to open.
Yeah, you mentioned Pop-Up Oxford. You can find out more information at popupoxfordms.com. That's January 19th through 27th. Everything from basketball to community reading, songwriters competitions. You got Hotel Hop, MLK Day breakfast, and much more. The Oxford Art Crawl is going on the 22nd. Plenty of things to take advantage of Oxford during that week. So, again, you can find out more information at popupoxfordms.com and visit oxfordms.com for the full calendar events to see what's going on in Oxford. Now back to Jeffrey Wright on the Oxford Exxon podcast. I've got a full week to complain about this. I hate having the last game of the weekend. I'm nervous all weekend. I can't enjoy the other games, and the Saints don't play till 3:30 on Sunday.
No, I mean...
The Chiefs have the first game of the weekend. That's where you're living right. I want the first game.
I mean, it is the ultimate, woe is me. I feel so bad for you that you have to wait
First world problems.
To watch some other... Yeah, I'm so sorry that you have to wait till the very last game of what is traditionally the best weekend of the NFL, the divisional weekend. I'm so sorry that you have to wait the whole weekend, and poor old little Kansas City gets to play first because no one watches their games, even though Pat Mahomes is awesome. So, yeah, woe is you. But, no, in terms of, mental, in terms of psyche, no, that absolutely stinks.
Well, it's like Dylan was so excited about having the Saturday night game. You don't have to wait till Sunday, and you have the day off the next day.
Yeah. I actually understand. I guess it doesn't really matter like that. I don't know if that 12 hours is going to matter a ton. But I was like, man, if I'm one of those teams, and I guess it helps because no one played on Saturday night, right, in Week 17?
No, everything was Sunday, I think.
And everything was Sunday, and most of those teams were playing, it felt like, at 3:25 because they didn't want anyone to have, like, an advantage of knowing.
Right. Yeah, they flexed all the good games into the 3:25 window.
So I guess it helps that the other team, like, it's not like someone played on Saturday and you're playing on and you're having to play a shorter week and they're getting the full rest. But yeah, I'm with you, man. Like, would it really be the worst thing to maybe stagger? Like, would it be the worst thing? Is it really that impossible for us on the NFL to have one game start at noon or whatever, have one game start at 1 Eastern, the other game start at 2:30 Eastern, another game start at 4 Eastern, and then, if you want to do the feature game, whatever, you have it start at 7:20. But, like, would it really kill us to have two games going at once, but make sure, like, the NFL is pretty good at making sure that game wraps up in 3 hours. Like, would it kill us to stagger it and maybe have the end of one game, the first half going of the next game? Like, is that the world's worst idea? Are they just that opposed to it?
I like the 2 days. I'm a fan of the current schedule, frankly.
I guess the problem with the 2 days is, like I said, when you get the Yates of Hell versus Connor Cook wild card match,
you get the lull
on Saturday. Yeah, and then you get, like, you followed that up with Stafford versus Russell Wilson, like Stafford on the road against a team above 500, and it went predictably. Like, you get some bad matchups, but I mean, I guess it is kind of cool. Like, hey, everyone is like, if you're a football fan, everyone is watching the same game. I am curious to know, does anyone know how NFL ratings went up? Because all I kept hearing was people weren't watching.
Yeah, the Sunday night ratings are really good this year.
Across the board, they're up.
All three networks ratings were up.
This is the first year I've really watched a lot of NFL because I adopted a team, and it's always more fun to follow a sport when you have a team. And the product is – I'm not ripping the college game. I know it's a totally different game. The product is a better product, not just because of the way the game is played, but an NFL game is 3 hours to 3 hours and 15 minutes. It's in, it's out, it's done, it's clean. It's a better, from a television standpoint, it's a much better product than watching one of these college games that goes on and on and on and on. You can block a segment of time. I mean, I don't even have the package, so I didn't get to watch the Bears week after week after week. I watched them. I probably got to see them 7 or 8 times, which was fine. But you got to see other teams, and just the product is generally better, and you can plan on it, unlike the college game where an 11 o'clock kick can sometimes go to 4 p.m.
I think there's two factors, and I think you mentioned them both. The game is way more digestible in terms of just the speed, the continuity. They have figured that game out. You factor in the other aspect that leads into that's part of the whole flow of the game, in that there's never been a referee. You better have both feet out of bounds, standing tall, and I can clearly tell that no one breathed on you in bounds for a ref to stop the clock, because they will look for any reason to wind that arm to keep that clock going and to make sure that, by God, that game ends in 3 hours. But there's that aspect. And then the other aspect about the NFL that you just mentioned, okay, you've seen the Bears play 7 or 8 times, but you've also seen Philly play multiple times. Like, college football is just so regional. And I understand that's kind of part of the charm of it, is it's like there is kind of a nation state element to it of SEC, Big Ten, like, there's kind of a local pride. But in terms of watching a whole league, it's so, and even compared to the NBA, which NBA star-driven league, but if you don't have league pass, how many times have you, maybe you don't count, Neil, but I'm just saying, like, a person that's not just diametrically opposed to the NBA, someone that likes basketball, but someone who doesn't have league pass. How many times have you seen Portland play?
Probably not much at all.
How many times have you probably seen the Kings play?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't stumbled across them when I'm just flipping the television, so that counts for something.
Okay. The Cardinals were the worst team in the NFL. I saw them full games, and I get it. Part of it's because I like Rosen, and now that Eli, it sounded like yesterday he was retiring. And maybe that's like a little masochism that because once Baker was off the board, I wanted Rosen, so maybe I watched myself or I found myself watching him thinking like what could have been. But I mean, the Cardinals were an awful NFL football team to watch. And I probably saw them play 6-7 times because of the way that Sundays work.
No, I agree. I mean, it's a completely different thing, but that does play into it a little bit. You have some semblance of understanding of so many different teams, and it makes the playoffs more interesting. It makes it where you actually have an opinion that's somewhat informed as you move forward. That's what this thing is.
Think about it. Indy and Seattle. Let's see. What did Indy start? Indy. I'm pulling it up right here. Because remember, Indy had that decision where Wright went to go for the win, or he basically went to go for not the loss, but it wasn't really going to, like he should have just punted it and played for a tie because he was so far deep in his own territory. It wasn't even like he was playing for the win. He was basically just playing to not lose at that second. Indy starts 0-1, 1-1. 1-2, 1-3, 1-4, 1-5. So they went 9-1 down the stretch. That'll get it done. And Seattle, let's see the West. Seattle started 0-1, 0-2, 2-2, 2-3. Let's see, 4-3. They started 4-5, and they went. Let's see. So down the stretch, they went 6-1 down the stretch. I mean, that's kind of what's fun about this wild card weekend is, on top of making it to the playoffs now that you've got the better teams, but even the 6 seeds. The 6 seeds have won 5 of their last 6, and the other one has won 9 of its last 10. It's pretty fun to think about.
Yeah, no, it's gonna be a good weekend. I mean, this is actually one of the better wild card weekends, like you said, because of the lack of duds. So we'll see how it shakes out.
I know you got to go, but the Grizzlies are kind of falling apart internally and on the floor. What's kind of the? I know it's a fairly new story that you'll be diving into today a little bit, but what's the general feeling up there about what's happening?
Two thoughts initially. Number one, the fact that a teammate could make Garrett Temple, who seems to be about as easygoing and universally well-liked of a guy that certainly I've been around in my short time covering the NBA, the fact that that guy was forced to go to blows against someone, it almost makes you want to sit down and have a conversation with Omri Cassidy, because that is a special thought. So it's clearly not good. I think the Grizzlies are pretty simple. Mike and Mark are clearly banged up. Mike and Mark have been clearly banged up for the last, really since November. And when they're both not going full speed, Mark's a 34-year-old center that's had injury problems. Mike Conley's a 6'1" point guard that they're trying to now make into, the Damian Lillard, the Russell Westbrook. It's okay, well, those guys are all 6'3". Like, there's fundamental flaws with this team, and then, it's just that weird. It's the weird aspect of sports in which, when things start going the wrong way, and you have a team that's not been together for a long time, like, and they can't seem to get a break. They can't seem to kind of have that one momentum game that snaps them out of it. Like, I really go back to, there was a Clippers game on a Sunday after they won a pretty contested, and, there was probably a bad call in San Antonio that ends up resulting in Memphis winning the game. Again, they probably shouldn't have won. There was a couple of bad calls in L.A., and, most normal people would go, hey, that makes sense. You had a 2-game road trip against 2 pretty even teams. You won one, you lost one. Like, that's a good road trip. But for some reason, the way that they lost that game, ever since then, they've just not, I don't know, man, it just hasn't looked the same. They seem disinterested at times on the defensive end. Like, you always knew the offensive problems were there, but I just think it's exactly what happens when you see a fragile team that kind of lost its mojo. It's going sideways. It's going sideways in a hurry. And the question is, can they get it back? And my answer is probably not, because at the end of the year, this was I think Vegas said this was, depending on what time you looked at it, this was a 34-37 win team. And I think they started the year ahead of pace, and they looked more like probably a 40-45 win team. And now you're starting to see, okay, well, this could definitely be a 35 to, it feels like now the ceiling's 40 wins. But if they don't get right quickly, feels very much like a 32-35 win team, kind of like what Vegas thought.
Yeah, they're 18-19 right now, tied for 10th in the West with Dallas. The West is just,
I mean, that's kind of the bigger issue in my opinion. While they're only like 2 games, I think they're 2 or 2.5 out of the 8. They're also only like 2.5 out from being back in finishing in the top 8. Obviously, the draft lottery will say something, but that would put them back in terms of not getting rid of this pick and finally being done with it to Boston. And so, one of the stated goals of the year was to get out of this albatross of Boston having this pick looming, just to get rid of it and be done with it. But now they're yet again in jeopardy of that's very much a real possibility that they're going to be in this draft again, and they're going to owe Boston another pick.
Yeah, it tells you how there's so much parity in the NBA. Memphis is just 3.5 games out of 4th in the West. On the flip side, they're just 2 games out of 14th in the West.
Yes. Which that would be what a wonderful – I need that to happen. I need a team in basically – I think it was November – can't remember. I think it was November where the Grizzlies were sitting at the top of the West. Literally the top of the West. God, what a great story that would be to finish the year second to last.
At some point, the GM's got, if it does fall apart, the GM's got to pay at some point, right?
One would think, but for whatever reason, that has never been the case.
Yeah, it's weird. They just go through coach after coach after coach.
Right. I mean, that was kind of Calkins' point last night. Like, okay, well, can you just keep firing coaches, or maybe, I don't know, fire the guy that's been hiring the coaches? Because it's not like Wallace has this stellar reputation amongst other people in the NBA. So I don't know, man. Like, it's a mess to watch. And the great thing for me is I've always kind of, when chaos and messes arise, I've always kind of never really been afraid to talk about them. And so for me, And for Calkins, I'll at least say this. At least now the Grizzlies are kind of interesting. I mean, yeah, you got Omri Cat, you got, Caspi Temple 1 coming up. The Mid-South Coliseum's available. Maybe we could just put Waller in here. Let's just get back to the good old days. Let's settle this like men. Let's settle this let's get Dave Brown on the horn. Let's get WMC TV5. Let's get him in here. And let's just throw some fisticuffs.
I'm for it.
It's more interesting than watching this team that scores 90 points and tries to win a game 90 to 89.
Yeah, no doubt. Have a good day, Jeff. Talk to you soon.
All right.
Thanks to Jeffrey, as always, for joining us on this Thursday. The podcast also brought to you by Mastercuts Lawn and Landscape. Give them a call at 662-607-7773. Maybe you want to set in motion plans for them to take care of your lawn all year long. Sometime it's going to warm up. You'll need that thing cut. Mastercuts takes care of all that for you, from pine straw and flower beds to landscaping to anything. And they're still telling you about their custom playgrounds that will entertain your kids for years to come. From forts to castles to pirate ships, Mastercuts can build a base for your child's imagination to run wild. So you schedule a free meeting to see what Mastercuts has for you. Again, that phone number is 662-607-7773 or info@gomastercuts.com. The podcast also brought to you by Community Mortgage, Oxford, Memphis, Soto County, and Chattanooga. All underwriting and processing is done in Memphis. You're getting local underwriting that understands your market, a leader in condo financing and the float down option. You can find Jason at 662-234-2704 or JLowe, that's JLOWE, at communitymtg.com.
Step into the new year in style. We still going? We're good? Step into the new year in style. You really need to experience the difference a quality sock makes. This is the first step in dressing for the job you want and not the job you have. Go to deadsoxy.com, enter the code Rebel Grove at checkout to receive 25% off all orders, including sale items. As Dead Soxy continues to grow, they appreciate the continued support of the Rebel Grove community. They're constantly striving to improve their quality, relationships, and customer experiences. They'll be the first to inform you of all new products and opportunities as they come. So remember to enter the promo code Rebel Grove at checkout for 25% off all orders. And Happy New Year from Dead Soxy. Podcast also sponsored by Pinnacle Trust. Pinnacle Trust is based in Madison, Mississippi, but it represents clients in 24 states, has advisors in 3 states. Founded in 1997, Pinnacle Trust provides detailed, specialized investment management, financial planning, retirement planning for individuals and businesses, and much more. At Pinnacle Trust, investing is treated like a commodity. Decisions are made using objective information and research, not emotions. So regardless of your level of wealth, Pinnacle Trust will sit down with you, listen to your goals, study your expenses, and put forth a comprehensive, detailed financial and retirement plan. They also have the Pinnacle Trust 401k advisory services. So maintaining an appropriate retirement plan for your company often seems like a daunting task, especially when you consider everything else that goes into running a successful business. But the Pinnacle Trust 401k advisory services provides plan sponsors with the expertise and consultation that they need to administer a retirement plan that inspires employees to reach their retirement goals. To learn more about all of this, go to pintrust.com, PINNtrust.com, and mention you heard about Pinnacle Trust on the podcast. You'll get 10% off your first year's fee.
Having a little problems today between tripping and almost taking the entire soundboard down with me a second ago. We called Jeffrey earlier, and some nice lady answered and said he was not available right now, and I'm not really sure what that was about because his phone was in his hand. But nonetheless, we've had a day.
Yeah,
so it's been
I thought you were about to wipe out just then.
I kind of did too. I thought I was going to take the entire thing with me, but it jerked the headphone port out. We don't exactly have like this standard studio where everything's like up and organized and connected. It's like some huge desk, and it creates some issues at times.
You know, when I bought this house, I wasn't thinking about having a podcast studio in it at the time. That thought, I can honestly say, never crossed my mind.
Never thought about podcasts in general in 2008, probably.
No, if I'm perfectly honest, I thought I was going to be here about 18 to 24 months.
It was a stopgap at the time.
Thought I was hitting just a quick reset button.
a decade later.
Yep.
Grant Gannon tried podcast on this site way back in the day, but that was way before their time. They were nowhere near at the level necessary to get them off the ground at that point. We're talking 2006, something like that.
Yeah.
5, probably. I don't know. Something like that. Anyway. Rebel Grove Memory Lane, brought to you by, where's James Bryant these days?
Probably in Baton Rouge. Be the first place I'd look.
Wherever Ed or Hugh is would be your first.
Baton Rouge or Lynchburg.
Virginia, Liberty have a rival site, have a scout site, 24/7.
They do
site.
now. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. Anyway,
my tip would be follow Twitter, and on Bible verse day for certain recruits, you'll know that they lost one. Lost a target.
You felt there's a connection there.
I'm convinced of it. I'm not alone. By the end, other people were buying into my theory.
It was not a shot at you, by the way.
No, wasn't you. You didn't disregard that theory.
No. I get it.
You began.
I
to
was
go,
just clarifying that we were not speaking of one Hugh Freeze there.
Not talking about Freeze. It started on Freeze's staff. It continued on Luke's staff. And presumably it will continue on the Liberty staff. Just my theory that when they lost a recruit, they went for context or perspective, went to the good book. That's all. It's not a knock on, not a knock on religion at all. Not even a little bit. Just found that was it. I found that there was a correlation. And if there wasn't a correlation, it was one hell of a coincidence.
I think you guys are right. I think the Seahawks is who I want next Sunday.
Yes.
The Eagles can be a little weird, even though that was a complete and utter blowout in New Orleans earlier in the year.
Well, they've been there. The Seahawks have too, but the Eagles were just there a year ago. They're playing with house money.
The Cowboys can be scary.
Well, their defense.
They've already beaten the Saints once.
Their defense is scary. Now, I'm not convinced at all Prescott can win a
shootout playoff game.
Not even a shootout. I'm not convinced he can win a fourth quarter playoff game on the road.
We'll talk more about it tomorrow. I think I like the Cowboys over the Seahawks, and I think I like the Bears to beat the Eagles in a very close football game.
Yeah, that 6 points is a lot of points. But the Bears have played really well down the stretch.
They have.
Really, if you look at their entire season, they lost that close one to Green Bay to open the season. I'm trying to think who they've lost to.
They lost in week 1.
Lost in week 1. They lost that really close game against the Patriots. I think it went to overtime. They lost to Tampa in overtime.
They lost to the Giants.
And they lost that weird game to the Giants up there in overtime. No one's just taken them behind the shed. And one of the games they lost, they didn't have Trubisky.
Yeah, that's true. That's
They're really good. I don't think they're a Super Bowl team, but they're good. And their defense is going to give you a shot somewhere.
Yeah, their defense just keeps them in games. They lost to the Dolphins.
Yeah. And it was close.
Yeah, it was in overtime, 31-28.
They lose to Tampa? Did I dream that?
They beat the Bucs 48-10.
Okay. So who'd they lose to? They lost to
their losses.
Green Bay, New England, Miami, and the Giants.
Yeah, that's it. 4 losses. 12-4.
And how many? And the biggest margin of defeat was
7 points, I think.
Yeah,
I think it was 7. They lost the opener by 1. They lost to the Dolphins by 3. They lost to the Patriots by 7, and they lost to the Giants by 3. Yeah. So 1, 3, 3.
2 of those
7.
were overtime games.
Yeah,
they're good. They're legit.
It's the team that's a year away, but they're going to scare the crap out of you in the process.
They lost to the Giants without Trubisky. Yeah. Chase Daniel quarterback.
That's game. Correct. Yeah, their defense is going to keep them in games. There's no doubt about that. I think they probably lose in L.A. in the next round, but
Chalk would say that.
I don't think the Bears beat the Rams twice over there, especially. Chicago would be another story, but in LA with a healthy Gurley too. I mean, he's got to be back. We don't know all his situation.
If he's not back, I don't like their chances against the Bears.
And I mean, the Saints have to have Armstead back. Terran Armstead's got to get healthy for them to make the run in the playoffs.
Yeah, because if they have that makeshift offensive line, that Bears defensive front is going to give them a nightmare. Rams too, either one.
No, I think it's if you're the Saints or and now it goes kind of against what I said a second ago, because if you look at one game, you go to the Seahawks. If you look at the whole picture, frankly, if I'm a Saints fan, I want the Eagles to get rid of the Bears and let's deal with somebody else.
Sure.
And just play Philadelphia the next week and have at it. I think that's sort of what you want if you just had to pick.
Yeah, you'd like to avoid the Rams and the Bears.
Seahawks over Cowboys, Eagles over Bears. If you had to pick the whole weekend.
Be surprised if you get both of those.
And then I get Dylan a full week of having to deal with a Rams-Seahawks playoff game. Two teams that hate each other.
If I'm the Rams, I'd much rather have the Seahawks than I would the Bears.
Oh, you would. Yeah.
Bears are a legitimately good team. They can run the football. They have a quarterback who's mobile, can make things happen, and defensively they are elite. Trubisky went to Minnesota last week in a game that Minnesota really needed to win, and he played high-level football.
Yeah, I don't trust him yet in playoff situations. He hadn't been there, so we don't know either way. I feel like he's got a clunker ahead of him before he kind of figures it out. It's like what Jeffrey said with Jared Goff, where
does.
You have kind of the moment where it goes, ooh, yeah.
He probably does. But he played really high level down the stretch after he got healthy. He was really good against Minnesota Sunday.
He was, but I guess and we're just podcasting at this point because I actually agree with you. But the Bears had literally nothing on that game. You could be free. There's no nerves at all whatsoever.
Well, they opened the game.
But the Rams are up 21 points in 5 minutes.
Oh, sure. Look, I agree. I think the Bears are losing in Los Angeles next week. If I'm the Rams, I'd much rather play Seattle next week than I would play the Bears. Seattle's defense cannot do to you what the Bears can do to you. That Bears defense can do it, and they've done it in the heat. They've done it in the cold. They've done it inside. They've done it outside. Pass rush typically doesn't take a week off.
Mm-hmm.
Khalil Mack's a phenomenal player.
Whoever said it yesterday, John Gruden did a great job of making two teams and Super Bowl contenders, the Cowboys and the Bears.
Yes. Absolutely. Khalil Mack's a game changer. You have to account for him at all times. And he's not the only impact player on their defensive front. They've got other guys who can really play that benefit from the attention that you have to pay to Mack. There were times Minnesota had 3 people committed to Khalil Mack. Well, the other guys are good enough to play in the NFL, so that creates problems. They're good. I think the Saints are going to the Super Bowl. I think it's going to be entertaining. Their path to the Super Bowl gets entertaining. I think the home field for them is critical. The fact that they've gotten to a Super Bowl before takes away the whole, oh God, from the.
Yeah, there's nothing. I mean, it's.
I think New Orleans is going to a Super Bowl. I think New Orleans is winning a Super Bowl, assuming that their offensive line is healthy. If their offensive line is not healthy, their path is
difficult.
Is very difficult.
Yeah,
because both the Bears and the Rams.
They need Armstead healthy. They need Bushrod healthy, and it's a crazy sentence. I might have already said this on the podcast. It's insane how much Ted Ginn helped getting him back just to move the field a little bit and help Michael Thomas last week. Or 2 weeks ago because they played no one.
8 weeks ago they were trying Des Bryant. They were looking
Brandon
for
Marshall.
They were looking for wide receivers.
Yeah.
Sean Payton knew that the margin for error was awfully thin. But I think they're the best team, and then like Jeffrey said, I think the AFC playoffs are fascinating.
Really fun.
Because I can make a case for the Colts getting to the Super Bowl. I don't think they're going to, but I can make a case for it.
Yeah, you can.
I can make a case for the Texans.
Yeah.
Defensively, they're very good.
Yeah, sure.
And when Watson plays well, they're legit.
They're the Bears of the AFC. I don't necessarily buy in them, but if you told me something crazy happened, I wouldn't be stunned.
Yeah, no, if the football gods came down and told you that either the Bears or the Texans made the Super Bowl, you wouldn't go, oh, my God.
Mm-hmm.
Well, for years, the Patriots have been this juggernaut. And look, they could get back to the Super Bowl, but they're not a juggernaut. No one watches them now and goes, oh, man, they're unbeatable.
Mm-hmm.
No, they're real beatable. Kansas City's beatable. Chiefs are beatable. Ravens are beatable.
Everybody's capable and beatable at the same time,
Yeah.
so it works out. Plenty at rebelgrove.com as we move on with our day. So check the website out, have some conversation, all those different things. We'll be back with another podcast tomorrow to close the week, and any coaching news that does happen, we'll have to you on the site, and then we'll talk about it on whatever the next podcast is. So appreciate all of you. We'll talk to you tomorrow.